This week on Arizona Illustrated, Southwestern myths and realities, finding the truth about a place.
These myths are really important because it informs people what is the frontier, what is civilization.
Searching the distant past for family.
The more you get into family history, the more you realize that there's more work to be done. There are more cousins to meet.
The joys of snow on Mount Lemmon. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a look back. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. When we see movies and images about a place, there's an intent, a desired impact. Something is left in and something inevitably is left out. And that is true of our corner of the Southwest, where myth and reality cross paths.
How do you get to know a place? A place like Tucson. A place like the Southwest Borderlands. How do you get to know what life is like there? What makes the authentic experience? Those are hard questions to ask about the present, let alone the past. To get answers, you have to visit a library or dive into an archive and look for glimpses of an earlier reality. Many of these artifacts represent a mythic West.
It's Main Street in Tucson, Arizona, where horses and riders are just as common a sight as the automobiles.
This is literally not true. In 1950, when Charles and Lucille Herbert shot this film, horseback riders were not as common as cars in Tucson. But the film was selling Tucson and continuing a Western myth. But amidst the myth, in some cases, there's a wealth of historical detail. Street scenes of downtown Tucson, a visual record of San Javier, information about how people farmed in the desert. This is what makes the films of Charles and Lucille Herbert so interesting. This is what makes myth so interesting.
Mr. Ted DeGrazia is the originator, and on his Ramada, under the bright Arizona sun, he paints the bold, colorful patterns with special textile paints.
Charles and Lucille Herbert were two young people who met on the East Coast and wanted to get out of there. In the late 30s, settled in Tucson. They decided that it was a great place, the sunshine was wonderful, and started making these little films, 10-minute films about the borderlands and the Southwest and different stories of interest.
Here's an unusual saguaro, or giant cacti, a freak. It's like a cauliflower. And another, the only one of its kind known. This is called a watermelon cactus. Why it grew that way, no one knows.
From 36 to 76, they worked in still photography, moving image, aerial photography. They used to call him a one-man chamber of commerce. And he kind of was. He wanted to promote everything possible about the Southwest. And it wasn't so much to get rich as it was just to share this amazing region with the rest of the world. One of the pieces that caught his eye very early on was down at Fort Huachuca, where, of course, there were the Buffalo Soldiers who had been there since after the Civil War, and they discovered that there was this last group of Apache scouts who were working on post and living on post. So already that was a formula for pretty interesting intercultural stories and photography. And it's not that they didn't capitalize on the sort of Wild West and the Indians, but their work was much more sensitive about depicting people.
South to Sonora, down Mexico way. Yes, it's true. There is an amazing change going on down here, but you have to see it to believe it.
What's interesting about the Herberts' work and why I think it's important to know about is that they actually talked to the people who had names and were allowed to look directly into the camera and speak for themselves.
Despite this, most Western myths were fabricated from little more than a few particles of reality, a lot of imagination, and the cultural attitudes of their creators. whether pulp novels, Hollywood films, or tourist brochures. But even the most realistic myths can be explored for their agendas, often by looking at what they chose to omit, or who.
The representations are not harmless. They're representing this process of settler colonialism.
So off we go, starting here at the picturesque Rancho Grande in South to Sonora for a thrilling adventure, seeing some of the oldest and most interesting spots on this continent. We cross the international boundary line at Nogales, Arizona.
Tourists coming to Tucson in the 20th century were invited through these productions. Go to Mexico and you'll have a great time there. You can have Mexican food. But tourists could have gone anywhere in Tucson and had Mexican food and had mariachis and had Mexican music. But that wasn't evident from the cultural productions.
Real Mexican music.
Making Tucson a gateway to Mexico was really important because that was instituting a border. So the message is that one time there were Mexicans there, but they're no longer there. So it's still that narrative of the vanishing indigenous people. Mexicans lived on that side of the border, and Mexicans did not live on this side of the border.
After you've made your purchases on your way home, you check your loot at the U.S. Customs.
Does this land have a history? No, it's empty. Does it have a previous owner? No, nobody owns it. All of a sudden you get these buildings, you get these resorts, you get the city, and you don't see Mexican labor, indigenous labor. There's no resentment, there's no hostility, and there's no message that they are angry that they lost their land. These myths are really important because it informs people what is the frontier, what is civilization, what is modernity, what is not modern, who's American, who's not American, who belongs, who doesn't belong. The myth then substantiates not asking questions.
One thing that exemplifies this juxtaposition of myth and reality are the Hollywood posters, the treatment of the savage Indian. One of them is specifically of Geronimo, it looks like him ready to strike, and it's this big and bold and colorful poster. And then we have the photographs that are black and white. His look is serene. He's just been captured by the cavalry. And in a way, you kind of think about what he's feeling at that moment, what that picture is going to say to his people, and how the cavalry wants him to look to the world. So it's very complicated. We found that there's some gray there between myth and reality, and that we need to really understand both.
Sun and sand, sagebrush and tumbleweed, rolling mountains and giant cactus. This is the old Santa Cruz Trail, running from Santa Cruz in Old Mexico to Tucson.
However you look at myth and reality, it's clear that they're deeply intertwined. Myths may draw upon bits of reality as inspiration, but they also shape how we understand and act upon the world. Even old Hollywood films, pulp novels, and tourist material, which look like pure fantasy today, still inform how we live in the Southwest borderlands. But there are countless ways to get a little closer to the reality of the past, from government documents to employee petitions to personal correspondence. Photographs from regular people show a far more diverse and less glamorous world than the mythic Southwest of seemingly incessant gun battles. Yet, our deepest understanding of the past comes from looking at the ways myth and reality shape each other.
Throughout February, Arizona Public Media celebrates Black History Month by featuring an extensive lineup of special programming with stories of struggle and triumph, and the political, scientific, social, and cultural contributions of African Americans. Here's a look.
When I read it, I couldn't believe that she was free enough to talk about them.
I read those words and thought, somebody knows who I am.
She was big, and she had the voice of God.
Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear in the tide.
Sheriff's Office, how you feeling today? You all right?
I'm doing good, man.
I'd be burying my head in the sand to think that we don't have racism in law enforcement. It does exist, but that doesn't mean that we can't make efforts to eliminate racism.
We have two rights that even the President of the United States does not possess. We can take life, we can take liberty, and we must go under the highest level of scrutiny.
I am proud to say that I was a police officer. There may be cultural differences, but there cannot be reactions and enforcement models based upon race.
There were things that I needed to learn about as a white person.
Wake up. This affects us all.
We in the West have created a fiction of Africa as isolated, static, and completely cut off. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Okay. You couldn't become a man if you didn't have cattle. It was just as simple as that.
12 churches carved out of the ground. Art of unparalleled beauty and technical brilliance. This was a new Jerusalem in Africa.
For more on Black History Month programming, visit our Arizona Public Media website for specific dates and times. Because of slavery, it has been difficult for many African Americans to trace their ancestry. But with the digital release and indexing of the Freedmen's Bureau archives, discovering one's family history has become easier and more accessible. We spent time with one Tucsonan who is now searching her own family tree, one branch at a time.
We're here at Tucson Medical Center in the cath lab recovery. We get patients directly from cath lab and from radiology post-procedure.
Stephanie Gelsonon is a registered nurse and has been working in the cath lab unit at TMC for 14 years.
We recover them from whatever sedation they got. Sometimes they get procedural sedation, sometimes general anesthesia. And if they have tubes in, we take those out, monitor them, try to make them comfortable afterwards. Okie dokie. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy taking care of people and meeting people. It's good. It's good work.
Lift your head up after I have a look at your site. Looks good.
And my grandmother was a nurse. She became a nurse when she was 54 years old. And that was after having 11 children and doing so many other things. I guess she kind of inspired me.
That inspiration around family ties has driven Stephanie to find out all she can about those who came before her.
The more you get into family history, the more you realize that there's more work to be done. There are more cousins to meet. It's kind of unending.
You brought everything you own, I think.
Stephanie conducts much of her research through the Family History Center. It is owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So these are our two children.
There are 6 family history centers in southern Arizona. This one is on Tucson's northwest side.
This is my mom's dad.
We got together at another family history center here in town that's on the east side of town, and she showed me what she had. And she started telling me the stories of her family. Her family is really close. And she was at a really busy point in her life, and I said, well, let me help.
Oh my goodness. What is she, about 3?
Debbie Weitzel is a member of the church and occasionally volunteers as a consultant with the center.
So she was...
Just a year.
She became her own family's historian when her father passed away.
All my relatives started sending me everything that they probably were sending him before.
The family history centers are open to the public, and all are welcome. There are numerous online databases and programs that can be accessed online at no charge, among them Ancestry.com
It was my great-great-grandfather.
and FamilySearch.org, a free service offered by the Mormon Church.
With the databases growing the way they are now, you may have been looking for somebody for years and never found any information, and then one day you try again, and there it is. So we've got
Retha,
infant
Mhm.
son. There's a census record or a city directory record or something that names this person. And it's just like the world opens up.
And by then her last name was Lee.
Right. And there's Ruth.
For Stephanie, her quest to reach further into her family's past continues.
It gets a little complicated.
Sometimes mulatto, sometimes black.
Because of slavery.
It's about
on both sides of my family, there was slavery.
These friends first met when they both volunteered to index and digitize records from the Freedmen's Bureau. The Bureau, a government agency initiated by President Abraham Lincoln after the Civil War, was created to aid freed slaves during Reconstruction.
And it was intended to help people who had been slaves to transition to life as free people. Births, marriages, deaths, children in school, hospitalizations, court disputes, anything that these people were involved in that was reported through the Bureau was recorded, and these records were kept.
Those records are now available online, and more are coming, allowing African Americans to discover their ancestors and reunite with their families.
On a train. My mom's mother's father's mother lived to be 106 years old, and she was born in 1838, and so and she was a slave.
The stories in Stephanie's family have been passed down from generation to generation. Finding the truth in them is part of the search.
It's neat to have stories that you've heard corroborated, to know that you heard it right, that it was the truth, that it actually happened.
Her father, Hank Webster, now deceased, was a Chicago firefighter for 38 years. He was the oldest of 11 children, all born at home.
My dad had always said that there were two babies, both of them boys, who were born who hadn't lived for very long. But I think he lamented not being able to know the other brothers, because he would have had 3 brothers.
There's another infant son, and we don't know for sure where he fit, right?
Don't know, no.
And on this day, Stephanie and Debbie would find the records of the second infant son, born and deceased 1934.
1934.
We found him. We found him.
Just like, oh, Debbie, that's, oh.
They only lived 2 hours.
One day.
One day. And buried the second day.
To find this record of this little boy, this little baby who my dad saw. He would have been 10 years old when his little brother was born. It was very personal because the family was right there. So he was old enough to have been impacted by his little brother's birth and by his death.
He's a real person.
It's sad that, you know, he didn't get to have a longer life. And yet at the same time, it's kind of like he had an impact on he's having an impact on me right now. That, and I remember my dad, you know, just how much he loved his family. My mom loved her family. It just kind of ties us all together. You know, these thoughts of family members who've passed on, even these little babies that come for such a short time, that are loved and missed. And then my Aunt Betty, Becky, Nellie, and Nancy.
Oh, we're missing 3 then.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated. And you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. A series of storms in late January brought snowfall to the high country, including Mount Lemmon. The storms were welcome, laying down a heavy blanket of snow. A rare treat for Tucsonans wanting to escape the desert floor and enjoy this glimpse of winter.
Beautiful day at Mount Lemmon. Come up here to get a couple photo shots and just play in the snow. Well, one thing is it makes the environment more quiet. It's clean and it's natural and just beautiful.
Brought the dogs out here, have them come out and play in the snow because they love snow. I'm from Florida originally. I'm just out here for work. I know it snowed here a few times, but nothing. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, this is pretty heavy snow for Tucson especially.
There's not many places you can start in the desert, come up, go skiing, go back, and be in your own bed that night.
And all week long I kept checking road conditions, and it didn't look so good until the news yesterday at 5 o'clock, and they said that they were opening half the mountain. Left downtown, Tucson, at about 9 o'clock this morning, and been here all day.
We are open. We got a lot of snow out of that last storm. I mean, a lot of snow, but we also got a lot of really, really high winds, which caused a tremendous amount of trees to come down on the runs, and also one came in contact with the lift and damaged the main lift. So we're only able to run off the smaller, lower lift.
It's not as big. There aren't as many runs, but snow is snow. The snow it's beautiful today. I encourage everyone to get up here early in the morning.
Good girl.
They got issues in their heads. They're crazy. They love cold weather. It makes them just do weird things. Just like when it rains, dogs just get crazy. It's hilarious.
We come up here about once or twice a year when it snows. We don't see it in the valley. My kids never seen us, so we bring them up here and enjoy it. Yeah, we're playing hooky, so my boss is watching. Look out, look out, look out, look out. Stop.
I'll go again, Mama. Can I go again?
That was so awesome.
Oh my God.
An hour away from town's good enough for me.
It's like a winter wonderland up here, and then 30-minute drive and you're back down in 60-degree weather, and it's beautiful.
You got running water, and you can shoot people skiing. It's a great place. And it's going to be 70 degrees in Tucson early next week.
Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Those are the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was the leader of a generation fighting for equal rights and justice. Here's a look back at 1989 during efforts to establish a Martin Luther King Day in Arizona, and how the Super Bowl played a role. From the vault.
Deep in my heart, I
Thousands of Arizonans have observed Martin Luther King Day for the past several years by taking part in an emotional march to the state capitol, where speeches were made alternately asking and demanding that the state legislature pass a bill establishing an official King holiday for Arizona. While a Martin Luther King bill has made it through the House, it has continually met defeat in the Senate. There had been talk that those lawmakers who oppose a Martin Luther King holiday might be swayed by an argument that Arizona would not be considered as a site for the 1993 Super Bowl unless the state had the official holiday. But now it appears the Super Bowl may not have to be called into play.
If that bill comes out, I'm going to ask this caucus to move that bill to the floor, and I believe it will pass.
The version of the Martin Luther King bill supported by Usdane replaces Columbus Day instead of combining Washington and Lincoln's birthdays into President's Day, a concept more palatable to Senate Republicans.
Because there were 16 or 17 votes for it in the last session, and it couldn't get to the floor because of the caucus problem, and because we're just going to keep dealing with it over and over again, and it's not in Arizona's best interest, as I've said before. If they could have gotten to 16, and they'd have to do it without me, I would have brought the other one to the floor, as I said previously, but it would have cost me the seat of the presidency because I don't believe we obviate our own rules.
Is this a victory for the Democrats?
Well, I think it's positive that at least a number of the Republicans are supporting a King holiday of some type. The question about exchanging Columbus Day or the President's Day is still up in the air, but I think it's positive at least that they're moving forward with the issue as opposed to just bottling it up in behind some caucus rule.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, growing specialty crops in Arizona. In this case, edible mushrooms. This scientist says it's a sustainable way to grow healthy and tasty protein for humans.
They're hugely nutritious. What they don't have is they don't have a lot of calories.
A young poet, writer, performer, and teacher shares her life, her wisdom, and her words.
Because see, I am a dreamer.
And an old-fashioned ball in the desert among the cactus. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.